to do a mental walkthrough the exhibition, what things would strike you the most? What are the memories and sort of the different areas? What are the puppets that kind of really stay with you before others?
Oh, thanks for asking that, because that means that I can really reference the work that Paul Zacharek created. He was just amazing. He's this amazing designer, maker, and well, the first thing that sort of greets you and kind of waved goodbye was the automaton figure, which I was given by clothing designer Jackie Haynes. It was in her fancy dress shop, and I think when she first got it, I think it's called George. I think he did work, but then he stopped working, so she gave it to me. And we'd always loved it at DEADpuppet because it's a bit craft work. So anyway, so I was delighted when I met Paul, because he actually managed to put a new little motor in it. So, you know, it kind of came to life again. So that's lovely. And it did make me laugh, because, you know, is it a puppet, is it an automaton, is it, you know, what on earth is it? And I love the craftwork connection, and I hope other people made that within the exhibition. And then, of course, there were the trolley bots, which were these cut-down golf trolleys, which were animated by pneumatics. And again, when they were first created for a show called Life Online, I think, I used to have a harem of men, actually, when I worked at DEADpuppet, who, you know, would enable me to create the ideas I had in my head. And the trolley bots were originally brought to life by a guy called Bill. I can't remember his surname, but anyway, and then I lost touch with him. So again, when I created DEADpuppet, I wanted to reanimate them, and so Paul Zacharek came in, and he managed to kind of find a way. It was they're interactive, so they're programmed to kind of move around, but you can override them as well. So I kind of quite like that aspect of them. But I also talked with Paul, because the inside-outside space, I don't know whether you remember it, but it's a really lovely space, and I've always wanted to create a piece of work for that. So I really pushed my budget out, and I commissioned Paul to animate the opening and closing of 4 umbrellas. So that references some other work that I've done around the functionality of the object, and I've done several live performances with the opening and closing of an umbrella. So,
so we're almost at the back wall. We've walked at the entrance, we've looked left.
Yes, because you saw those through the window, and also the plastic bag.
Mm-hmm.
And blowing in the wind, well, it's kind of animated by an industrial fan, which again makes me laugh. But I was really intrigued by a question that you asked, actually, in terms of the ephemeral and its relation to the archive and the puppet. And I think you were articulating around character, and that in reference to the ephemeral. Yeah. Because with the ephemeral, you seem to articulate that there wasn't that dichotomy between life and death that you get with the physical object. So I quite welcomed that thought. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Well, I think there was something about the for me, there was something about the character attributed to something very recognizably human in some way that already comes with it comes with a life and a death. It comes with a chronology, whereas the ephemeral, you know, an umbrella or a bag in the wind has a very different duration and a very different life, because perhaps an umbrella stops moving, but it doesn't die.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, no, there's a wonderful Cantor quote about the collapsed umbrella, which I can't remember, but it's something like it's a pathetic icon of its previous life or something. It's very wonderful. We could offer a prize for anybody who can blog in the quote. Yes. Oh yeah, the gaze, that's right. Just picking up from again, you're referencing to the gaze, and whether it's our gaze which actually creates a character in the ephemeral. And that kind of linked in with a discussion around narrative. And again, I taught within the creative banter that, you know, really we can't stop having narrative, can we? We're always trying to create narrative within what we see.
It's true, but I think there's especially with the ephemeral, to me there was something about meaning that worked not necessarily in a narrative way. There was something very cacophonous about the things that it was making me think of, or the things that it was saying that didn't quite fit into a story or a narrative per se. But we always, I think, try to piece them together into something that forms a sort of coherent whole of some kind.
Yeah, I think
interesting.
I think the ephemeral's a bit like a haiku. It's a little fragment.
You mentioned Cantor, and I wonder if you could talk a bit more about his influence, just in the exhibition and in your work and thinking.
Golly, well, you know, you have a few experiences in life, and the Cantor experience was certainly, I suppose, one of the most important creative and emotional experiences that I've had. It just sort of really I just carry him around, and you know, there's so much pontification about his work now. He would hate it. He hated it when he was alive, and he used to rant and call people parasites. But of course, there's always a hypocritical slant to him. I mean, because in a true Cantorian way, his work should just die, really. It should just stop. But then, of course, there's the wonderful archive gallery in Krakow, which I haven't been to yet, actually. And his house that he built with the giant chair, which I have been to. So he also wanted to create an archive and leave a trace. It's a shame now that it's all, you know, all the arguing and the unpleasantness that was around at the time of his death. I kind of quite like the fact that his wife, Maria Sangret, I think you pronounce her name, so I apologise if I've done that incorrectly. I think she's now very much in control, isn't she, of what happens with the archive. And I think, good on you, lady, because I know when I was in Charleville and Cantor was there, he was there alone, and I think he had a fear of being alone because he knew he was going to die, and he didn't want to die alone, which is really amazing when you think all his work is looking at death. And you know, sorry, Cantor, we all die alone. It's something we do alone, even if you're in a crowded room, we're going to die alone. But anyway, that's another thing. So to appease him and make him happy and things, there was rumour that Maria Cantor was going to come. And I just thought, oh my goodness, I just thought she was so amazing in The Dead Class, you know, an amazing, powerful woman. So there we all were, and, you know, on tender hooks that she was going to arrive. And then, of course, who arrives but Maria, but not Maria, the wife, but the mistress. Mm-hmm. So this young actress. So, you know, just kind of reading between the lines, you know, the backstory to his wife, Maria Sangret. It's quite nice and ironical that now she's got the control of Cantor's legacy, whereas maybe in his lifetime she lost that control.
So does that mean, well, I'm not following directly on from that, but I wonder about this exhibition.
Yeah.
And how and how it situates itself as an archive when it's not an exhibition. And is it an archive of your work? Is it the archive? Is it something you could hand over to someone else and say, this is Nina? This is Nina's work?
Oh, I wish it was in that state to hand over, because there's also a huge archive of paper. So when DEADpuppet was wound up, all the board of trustees was interested in was the financial records. The creative archive was going to be skipped. And so I saved it, and I don't quite know what I'm going to do with it, but I couldn't destroy. I mean, we've got notebooks and things with Rachel's amazing drawings within the margins of notes and things, and I couldn't just put all that in a skip. So I wish it was in a state to hand over. But I've got to work out what I've got to do with it, because it's, I mean, I must write my will, and my will say take everything to the tip, because I wouldn't want anyone to have the task of having to sort out my studio space. I'd just, you know, just put in the bloody skip and be gone with it. So while I'm alive, I'm sort of hanging on to it, and I might turn it into some creative usefulness. But when I die, then it can just all go, really. I mean, Rachel Field might have other notions of what she might want to do with it, but I wouldn't want to burden anybody with it.
And in that similar vein, I'm curious, where does destruction sit in all of this? Because we've talked about preservation and reanimation and resurrection. Yeah, and I wonder, in relation to the exhibition, in the exhibition, around the exhibition.
Well, I suppose the destruction doesn't really sit anywhere, because it's like a fabricated lie. I mean, there were destroyed puppets that were exhibited, particularly the wax figure where I smash her head. But I mean, it was all theatrically recreated, and even the little toe puppet that's made of latex and completely decomposing. I suppose that's quite honest, because it is naturally dying. But no, they're still preserved. There's no genuine destruction there. Well, this is a collection of puppets. Really, in the corner are ones relating to Golem, which was a piece of work that I led on with Ducot. I was really lucky to get this puppet. The Golem myth is set in Prague in the 16th century. It's a myth of the creation of a living man made out of clay. And it's a Jewish story which relates to the persecution of the Jews, which, didn't just happen with Auschwitz. I mean, this was kind of happening in the 16th century. And so I felt to tell the story, I really wanted to go to Prague. I wanted to see the Golem, really. But, and I wanted to get puppets from Prague that had a previous life. And I was really, really lucky to be able to buy this puppet, which I think is sort of 19th century folk puppet. This puppet I used within the show. It's got a detachable head, and the head's actually a Hungarian sculptor, and the body's a more modern tourist puppet. So I sort of took the two together. And with the myth of the Golem, it obviously, because it's a man it's a life created by man, not by God. It's imperfect, and so in the story it runs amok and kind of has to be deactivated. And the story goes that it's in the old new synagogue in the upper room. And within the Jewish religion, they don't destroy anything with the name of God within it. So all the old Torahs are put into this room, and so the Golem was put into the room, and it just all becomes a lot of dust. And so I thought, oh, how amazing to have a lot of dust on stage. And of course, technical people don't dare. So I had to think of a way of representing dust. And then I thought of compacted dust, and so I thought of felt. And I've always loved Joseph Beuys's work. And so I kind of had a contact with Richard DeMarco of the DeMarco Foundation. And I knew, because he brought Cantor and Joseph Beuys over to Edinburgh. So I wrote to him and asked if he knew of any way of getting hold of the felt suit. And he gave me the contact to Joseph Beuys's assistant, Robert McDowell. And I wrote to Robert, and then I got this phone call, and it said, "Am I speaking to Nina Watson?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "The woman with the amazing signature?" And I said, "Oh." And it was Robert McDowell, and I explained that I wanted a felt suit to represent the Golem, and he goes, "Oh, come up and see me, yes, of course." And I said, "Well, hang on a minute, the last one was sold at Sotheby's for £41,000, and that's a little beyond my budget." And he said, no, don't worry, just come on up." So I arranged to spend 3 days with him for him to, start to make the suit. And I drove all the way there. It took 12 hours because he lives sort of beyond Edinburgh. And I arrived, and I heard a woman on the phone, and I sort of knocked on the door. The sort of door was open, and then this woman appeared, and I was sort of down below because there's sort of steps up to the house, and she sort of looked down at me in horror. And sort of said, "Yes." And I said, "Oh, I'm Nina Watson, I'm here to work with Robert." And she said, "Robert's not here." And I said, "Oh." And she said, "He's been called away, his parents have been in an accident, and he's in Iceland or somewhere." And so it all started to become unhinged, and she didn't even ask me in or anything. And I said, "Oh, so I suppose I just turn the van around and drive back home." And it later kind of transpired. He still was sort of talking about making the suit. He was terribly apologetic, but it never really materialised. So I got that close. But this suit was made by costume maker John Hayes. And then these puppets are just from different shows. This puppet was in 2 shows. The first was Still Life, which was created at the time of Bosnian War, which was interesting because we're taking the concept of a puppet can live and a puppet can also die. And so we basically took the puppets out, killed them, and then put them away again. And then we took them out, killed them, and put them away again. I mean, that was basically the kind of scenario of the show. And it was amazing working in the studio and doing awful things to the puppets, and then going back to the news reports of what really was happening in Bosnia. And, you know, we could never match the horror of what was really happening. But, yeah, no, that's quite a powerful show, I think. This show was a very early show, based on an Anais Nin short story, Replicas. It was the first collaboration I really did with Rachel Field, who I later worked with DEADpuppet. I don't really know what more to give you in terms of the stories around these, unless there was particular.
Just a question going back to the puppet at the end. You said
Yes.
the head was separate from the body and you put it together.
Yes.
How was that? How, I mean, the decision? Well, no, more kind of like it could be anything, kind of why particularly that head, and you're creating something from 2 different parts. Obviously, which wasn't made from scratch.
Yes. Well, I wanted to show the making of a puppet on stage, and the head is actually kind of covered in clay, so it's kind of like I was sculpting it, but I was really uncovering it in the bundle of clay, and then I was constructing the puppet in full view of the audience could see it being made into the puppet. So I think it was sharing that, really. And that's such a beautiful head, and quite golem-esque. It looks, you know, the dark face of clay. So that's how it worked, really. It was a tricky number because it's a very difficult thing to pull off. And I worked with, Jan, I forget his surname, he lives in Norwich, and he worked out this way of clipping it on, but it was terribly scary in performance because it could become detached at the wrong moments and things, so it was quite problematic actually. But that's what, I mean, you know, live performance, that's what you want to see, isn't it, really? That problem of animation.
I think that really is because the show is called DEADpuppet, but they are dead because there is no live performance. And to me, that live performance is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Without the person behind it, then really they are just objects.
Well, I would have agreed with you until I read Michael Fried's essay, Art and Objecthood, which kind of kicked it all off in the 60s, really, where you know he commented on the fact that kind of sculpture was becoming to need the interaction of the presence of a person, and so then he kind of damned it as theatre. And I just find that intriguing in a way, that, you know, once you have an object and a human presence, there is interaction between them.
But there's a difference between theatre and art in a gallery.
Well, I don't know whether there is that much of a difference,
In a
actually.
theatre, it's the people on the stage who move. In a gallery, it's the people looking at the objects that move.
Yes, although I just think that line is becoming so distorted now.
It means they would install.
Yes,
or in fact we are being asked to react towards inverted commas within our space.
Yes, and even in the conventional puppet setup of, you know, the black box and the audience, I mean, there's still manipulation going on. And I mean, I know that I was we both were manipulative of the audience with how we were presenting things on stage.
But isn't that what actors do as well?
Yes, but it's
not the representational register. I think it's maybe what you mean, that it's not the question of animation and life and engagement isn't necessarily prompted by just the space of the stage. And that space of the stage can be looked to be many different things, including, I think, a space like this where you have they're animated in different ways.
But are actors more control freaks than puppeteers because they're now using a lot more puppets in things like wars?
yes.
Where they've got animate beings there that they need to control. And animals have got minds of their own.
Well, I would hope they have. I mean, when I saw Warhorse, I thought too much bloody acting, actually. I think they, you know...
This is what I'm saying. The actors who are the control freaks.
Well, I mean, that brings us nicely to the Craig puppets. And, you know, I'm delighted to have Edward Gordon Craig's puppets. I mean, he owned all these puppets. I mean, just in terms of control freaks and the segue there with the Abu marionette and the questioning of the actor's ego there. But it's very, very special that I've managed to be able to show these puppets. They're from a private collection, so they've never ever been shown in public before. I'm about to try and find funding to enable the identification of the puppets because we don't really know the history behind them. But, yes, this is the last corner of discussion, I suppose. Apart from my little puppet here, the jig doll, where I encourage you to have a go. And this was in a junk shop in Crewe when I was a student, and I didn't have a lot of money, but I had an old typewriter I didn't like, so I managed to swap the puppet for the typewriter. But yes, no, it's just interesting. I mean, these are, you know, obviously very rare, very valuable because of their link with Edward Gordon Craig. We don't really, I mean, Craig died in 1966 and he was born at the end of the 19th. So we don't really know. I'd love to find out the stories behind them because then that will throw light on Craig's contact with other puppeteers, which I think could be a really valuable thing. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because Craig's linked to them, these are automatically more valuable. Do you see what I mean? So, you know, these won't be sent to the tip. It's kind of like Paul Clay's puppets. Paul Clay made these amazing puppets for his son Felix, and they were made out of the scraps that are around in the studio. And now, you know, they're absolutely preserved beyond their life because there's now replicas that have been made of them. So those scraps of material that were on the floor, they've gone back to the weavers and they've woven the cloth to match the scrap of material so that they could make the reproductions of the puppets. Now these were just made for, you know, as child's play, but because it's got their clays, then we want to hold on to them really desperately, and they're not, you know, whereas they're ephemeral. So there's a whole issue there of, you know, should they just be allowed to die, to vanish? All that energy spent in preserving them.
What would you feel if someone approached you and actually, we want to preserve all the puppets in that way. How would that make you feel about, then they couldn't be kind of put to death when you die as well? What would be your response?
Well, I mean, the thing is that they will die eventually because the materials will just kind of decompose. I mean, the DNA will not have any puppets that are made out of latex, because if you've seen with the little toe puppet, it just isn't. So I'm pleased that they're dying actually.
You wouldn't want them to kind of be...
I would hate it if somebody tried to recreate her. Yeah, no, it would seem a fallacy, a kind of falseness that I wouldn't really like. Are there any more engaging, provocative, intriguing questions that you want to throw at me, or do you want to just go and have a hot chocolate?
Do you miss this performance of working with the puppets?
Well, I still perform, so a lot of the research I've been doing has had a performative element. I certainly missed DEADpuppet as a company in getting this together, because it was an absolute nightmare, because it was just me with all these balls juggling in the air. But having said that, there's also been a lot of collaboration within the exhibition too. So, but no, I'm looking forward to doing a show about Punch.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah.